All right, what's up? We are back with another episode of the JT Exchange podcast, where we fill you in on all that is SU track and field. Joined again today by my assistants, Coach Heuler. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Weir, what's up?
How we doing?
I'm doing good. I just told her that. We're doing all right. I will say we did try to get Showstead in on this one. He is just too busy with grad school. So Heuler gets to grace us with her presence once again.
Okay, I know they love to hear me.
Okay, our third podcast in a row with 3 different venues. So we are moving around a lot, just trying to see what works, different views, that type of stuff. But today we're going to recap this past weekend's meet with the JT duels. We're also going to kind of look ahead. It's a little crazy week with the Easter, Sunday coming up and Good Friday and all that. So things are adjusted slightly, and it's just a different week is all. But yeah, let's get into this weekend JT duels, formerly the JT Invite. This is a meet that's been going on for, probably 30 years. I think 40. I think we're almost up to 40. I think we did the 35th anniversary a couple years ago, if I remember correctly. Once again, I competed at this meet when I was in college back in, 1937 or whatever it was, 2005. But yeah, so we switched it to the JT duels a couple years ago in honor of Jim Taylor. It was actually nice to hear our announcer speak about, how many. I think he had 75 consecutive dual meet wins, 100 plus, total. So we do a head-to-head competition with all the different teams. So we did have 11 total teams with us. So every team has 10 wins or losses, if you will. Pretty good day, pretty good weekend. Started Friday with the throws. Coach Heuler, why don't you, recap us? So how'd the women do in the hammer and the shot put on Friday?
For hammer, we did have a few PRs. I believe both Avos actually PR'd in hammer. And then the rest of us, they didn't do awful. They got close to some PRs. Some people know that they still got some stuff to work on, but the energy was still high. And same thing in shot put. I think 2 people had PRs, and the rest are kind of just ready to go for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it is super early in the outdoor season. They're switching over from weight to hammer, and then also from the indoor shot to the outdoor shot.
Yeah.
So there is some adjustments. Temperatures were okay. It was, I think, Friday mid-40s, high 40s.
The wind was killer on Friday.
Yeah, it was pretty windy.
I think I walked away with some wind burn.
Yeah, and there wasn't a lot of sun on Friday either. But yeah, overall, I think the women opened up the day pretty well. What about the men?
The men did really well in hammer. I think all but 2 men PR'd in hammer. It helps that they're all freshmen, but adjusting to hammer because they had never done it before, so some of them are getting some really good marks that I don't think they were expecting to see this early in the season, which is really nice. One that stood out to me was Cooper. Cooper threw 44 meters in the hammer, so he's really ready to go for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think I checked. I think that's like 10th or like 7th, between 10th and 7th all time at Susquehanna, and it's definitely the furthest that a freshman has ever thrown in hammer, for sure.
And then with shot put, I know our senior Cole qualified himself for outdoor regionals in shot, so...
Yeah, as Cole does, a little flair for the dramatic, likes to wait till the end of the competition to really put one out there. But again, finished up Friday, pretty good day. Rolling into Saturday, where all the rest of the events take place. Kick the day off at 9 a.m. With the women's discus and the 10,000 meters. For us, we didn't plan to run any of the 10K runners just because a lot of them are opening up in the 5K this week. Weather-wise, a little chilly in the morning.
Yes,
I remember as we're driving around to set up, I had to have McGuire check the steeple to make sure it wasn't frozen. I think when I got here a little before 7, it was like, the feels like was like 26, 27 degrees. So it's pretty chilly, but once the sun came out throughout the day, it became awesome. You know, so let's roll through how'd the women do on the sprint side.
We had another pretty good meet. When we host home meets, as we've talked before, it's always nice to allow everybody an opportunity to compete. Didn't have quite as many PRs as we've had from that group over the last couple weeks, but I think almost everybody was like right on the heels of either a season best or a PR, which is really encouraging when you look at the temperatures weren't quite ideal from a sprint standpoint. But they're still putting up some pretty good numbers. They had a little help with some wind here and there during certain heats and certain events. which always helps a little bit. But they performed really well. Megan has been continuing to really progress over the end of outdoor season, and it's carrying over into the outdoor season. So that's really encouraging to see. Alyssa's another one that she's continuing to work on some stuff with her hurdles, but she had a relatively good hurdle time, not too far off of a PR for her. And she opened up in the 4 hurdles, which is always, a bit of an adjustment for a lot of the PA athletes specifically, because they're competing in the 300 hurdles during high school. So when you add 2 extra hurdles, another 100 meters, it's a totally different race. And it's always interesting, the first time we have freshmen compete in that, how are they going to respond to that extra 100 meters, those extra 2 hurdles? So that was a fun experience for her. And then our 4x1 performed, I think, really great. We had a new addition to the sprint realm with Kendall anchoring our 4x1, which was, nice to get to see her, expand her repertoire. Obviously she's an outstanding pole vaulter, but to get to see her, stretch her legs a little bit and actually get out on the track and run and be part of a relay, which is always pretty exciting. So that was awesome to see.
Yeah, I think with the temperatures what they were, like, we as coaches don't try to talk too much about it leading up to the meet, but as a sprinter, anything under 60 is really tough to perform well in. So to see anyone even close to their personal best in the sprints and jumps is great to see. I think, again, the sun helped a lot. If the sun wasn't out, it would have been a miserable day.
Yes.
But JT always finds a way to bring the sun to the JT invite, and he did it again. But I agree, the 4x1 to me was probably the biggest surprise / exciting event for me for the day, because behind the scenes, handoffs didn't go great throughout the week.
Yeah, it was a little rough.
As you said, Kendall is expanding her skill set, and we're trying to use her in some different ways other than just the vault, which she did, flawlessly again, breaking the school record once again. I can't remember. I think she jumped 3:58, maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head. So she did get the outdoor school record. On jump standpoint, we didn't do a whole lot. I know Annie and Charlotte high jumped pretty much do what they normally did. Denicia qualified for the triple jump for champs, which is great. Distance wise, we focused a lot on the 15, the 800. We've got Kylie ran the 5K, but really we're focusing on the 5K that was coming up this week for most of them. And then in the throws for the women.
Yeah, so we had jav and disc on Saturday. And our freshman Brooke, javelin thrower, she did phenomenal. She had a lifetime PR. She qualified for regionals, super stoked. That was really good to see. And then in disc, we had Captain Kira PR'd by 1.5 meters. So that was fun because she didn't get to practice disc much last year. So for her to come out and throw a PR like that, second meet of the year, is pretty nice to see. And then for the men, just like last week, John Hughes, another PR, another regional qualifying mark. So to see him consistently that high up there already is really good, and it gives a good forecast for the rest of his career. And then disc, just like the hammer, the men carried the energy. Everybody but one person PR'd. Cole qualified for regionals with a PR, 44 meters finally. That was nice to see. We had freshman Kieran Hennessy through 42 meters, freshman Cooper through 40 meters. So we got some guys that are right on the tails of other people in the region.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, the discus being a little bit more competitive within the program, both on the men's and the women's side. I know historically disc on the women's side has been one of our weaker events, so hopefully we can get some people, qualified for finals at champs this year. On the men's side, we've had a couple good discus throwers throughout the year, but it looks like we've got a lot of really young talent right now, which is really exciting to see. They really push themselves at practice, which leads into meet day, which is awesome. But yeah, I agree. I think the throws was really exciting. It was great to see Brooke. I know she was a little down on herself after LVC, but she didn't need to be, and then she came and she did awesome. I was at 35 and change, I think it
36.
was. 36. I'm underestimating our own athletes. So great for her, and, as we segue back over to the men and the rest of the events, same thing with the distance runners. We focused a lot on the 15 and the 8. A lot of our distance runners were coming back from pretty serious sicknesses over the last few weeks. So just kind of getting them back in the groove in the swing of things, racing. They like the temperatures a little bit better, but after coming off of some respiratory sicknesses, it's not great to be running in the cold. But overall, I think they had a really good day. I think Evander really stepped up. He ran a 2:01 in the 8 after he doesn't really train for it, which is awesome. And just jumps-wise, we were just focusing on getting people qualified for champs early. So then we can kind of figure out where we want to put people as we move throughout the year. And I think, Gabe did well again. Kyle Landry, he's continuing to, I think he had a lifetime best in the long jump. And then everybody triple jumped to get a mark. So they might not have done well. But as I'd mentioned with temps, well below 50, below 40 for the whole day, just to get out there and to jump is good. And to qualify for champs was big for us. Pole vault, high jump were inside. I know Hayden Durst finally jumped 415. So as a freshman, that's great. I'm pretty confident he's going to jump much higher than that this year. He's been working really hard, and Coach Goodspeed's done a great job, with his top-end technique and getting him confident with the poles. But why don't you tell us how the sprints rolled out this past weekend?
I think that, that group is just performing very, very well right now. We've talked about the temperatures and, all of that, and it's difficult to run fast in those conditions. But the sprint and hurdle group on the men's side of things, they had a very, very good performance this week. We had a couple guys that, didn't quite perform as well as we were hoping in indoor. But now that we're getting into outdoor, they've got a couple races under their belt. I'm starting to see the development and the things that we've been working on over the course of the last 30 weeks. All of that stuff's starting to click a little bit now. Dom opened up with the 100, 200, ran almost lifetime bests in the 200, and he was sub 11 in the 100, which was really encouraging to see. And then we had Owen and Nate that were both right on his heels. Dom took first in the 100 and the 200. Owen took second in the 100. Nate came up for a fourth place finish in the 100. Both of them there very good times, low 11s. Owen almost squeaked under that 11 barrier. 200 runners performed very well. Nate and Owen came back, ran 22.4 something and some change. So that was really encouraging to see. Mason had a great opener in his 400, cracking 50 by a good chunk, getting down to 49.33, I believe. And from the sprint side of things, I think one that, we talked a little bit about last week, Ryan Sullivan, he's just been having a phenomenal first few weeks of the outdoor season. He came out in his 400, ran a lifetime best, right on that border breaking 51, which is really encouraging to see, somebody that hasn't necessarily had that success over the last couple of years, that they're really starting to develop. The work they're putting in is really starting to pay off. And I think that, with some of our top guys, we kind of expect some of those good performances. But it's nice to see, those kind of next guys in line are starting to step up and, respond to the training and push themselves.
Yeah, I think that, we haven't really talked about it. It was pretty windy on Saturday as well. So I think it really wasn't great for 400s. And I think to see Mason run that, low 49 in Ryan to almost get a lifetime best with it being under 40 degrees and windy on the backstretch is really impressive.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't really talk about, to me, the race of the day.
Oh, that was coming up.
Okay. So I cut you off. Yeah, go ahead.
So, obviously, we've got a pretty good history of having some very good high hurdlers specifically. The high hurdle group really, showed the work they've been putting in and the talent that's in that group. The 60 hurdle groups, when we looked at the event rankings through indoor, they were ranked top 8, which I thought was a huge accomplishment for those group of guys, losing some of our top 3 of our top high hurdlers last year. But Calder and Carter had phenomenal races. This is the fastest that Carter has opened up in a 110 race in his career.
I think he only missed his PR by a couple hundreds.
Yeah, I think he was 200ths off.
Yeah, yep.
And right now they're sitting 3rd and 5th in the nation, which is, obviously very
Is that
early.
true?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
They were second and fourth at the end of the day, but then they dropped one position.
Okay.
So that's obviously really encouraging to see. I know it's early, but it's still very encouraging to see, and, kind of lights a little fire under them and, keeps them motivated that, all of the work is paying off.
Yeah.
But then Nico, he had a phenomenal performance. I think this was the first time that he high hurdled since conference indoor. And he had a huge PR in the 60 hurdles, and he crushed his PR from last year.
4/10 or 7? I think it was 4/10.
Yeah, I think he was just about a 1560, and then he went down to 1524.
Yeah, he was pumped.
And definitely some technical stuff, and getting used to the extra 10 hurdles and the other 40 meters. But that was really encouraging to see from a younger guy. He's stepping up with some of our top athletes, and he's performing very well.
Yeah, it was really exciting to watch, and at some point we'll figure out how to work in like video replay into this podcast. I know there's ways to do it. I could just be like, "Hey James, cue the video now," and then we can pretend to watch it. But they were neck and neck, with Calder and Carter, which they are in practice a lot, and they push one another, which is great. And somehow, Calder finished. I don't know how he beat him, but Calder got him at the line.
Yeah.
But it's exciting to see them open up with those performances. It was a bit windy. It was a 3.7.
Yeah.
Still legal, but it was, a bit windier in some of the other heats. But it's really exciting, to kind of see where we're going to go from here from the rest of the year, right? Start getting some warm temps.
Yeah.
It's exciting. So to finally like go through the recap of the scores, as I mentioned, it is a dual meet scoring championship, and final scores weren't really released too much. We knew that Bloomsburg won. They were 10-0 for the women. Scranton was second with 9 wins. And Lockhaven was 8th, and then our women actually ended up 4th, which is exciting. They beat St. Francis, which is Division I, St. Bonaventure, which is Division I, Juniata, Mansfield, D2, Alfred State, PSU Harrisburg, and Keystone. So really excited for our women. I think that was kind of a complete team, effort win for them. Yeah. They scored points kind of all around the board. And then on the men's side, it was tight. Someday we'll get a trophy. I made a joke to the Lockhaven coach Aaron Russell that I'm gonna stop letting these D2 and D1 schools come so we can actually get a trophy next year. But the Lockhaven men ended up taking the men's team championship and the 4x4. We ended up finishing second with 9 wins, and then we actually beat Bloomsburg, St. Francis, Alfred State, Scranton, PSU Harrisburg, Mansfield, Juniata, St. Bonaventure, and Keystone. So the only team we lost to was Lockhaven. It was like about 30 points, I think. Yeah. And mind you, we didn't run any 10Ks or anything like that, but really excited with how the guys did.
Yeah.
It's a fun meet. We always get a lot of compliments afterward. It's our senior day where we get to acknowledge all of our seniors. We had a lot of alumni came back, stop in, say hello. You don't get to talk to them much, but just to see them come back and interact with the current teams, really exciting. And then we had the alumni event after, which was a lot of fun. It's just a great day all around.
Yeah.
Jane Taylor actually stopped in today to say congratulations that we had a great day. She wasn't able to make it. They had some family friends in town on Saturday, but she stopped in to say that we did a great job, and she was just so happy with the team and the program, and shared that Jim was so proud of us. That means a lot to me. I mean, as I've mentioned, Jim was a big mentor for me, even though I only knew him for a short time. So to have her come in and to say thank you was really meaningful, and I appreciate that. But let's transition to Easter week. So this week's a little crazy. Basically, I moved to Pennsylvania 14 years ago or so, and I learned that a lot of PA schools don't like to compete on Easter weekend. I understand it's a holiday, I guess, just in Western New York where I went to school, where Coach Heuler went to school. I don't know about how Ohio was, but we competed on Easter Saturday like every year. So it wasn't even like a thought that we wouldn't have a meet. But down here, it's a little different. Kids want to go home. I respect that. So what we do is we split the team up. There's a meet at York on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. This might air tomorrow or the day of, but meet at York. So we're going to take a group of about 45 athletes down there. We tend to bring a lot of 5K people down there. I've mentioned a few times we're focusing on that for this week. They usually have really good competitions in that race. It's under the lights, which is nice. We learned a couple years ago, we've been going there for a few years now, that even if the weather isn't great, the track tends to be pretty fast. I wish they would host a meet in May because times would be phenomenal there. The track is fast. They do have an indoor space to get out of the weather. So we're going to take a small group down there, a few throwers, quite a few jumpers, Pole vaulters are going to go down there as well. Weather's looking okay. We're hopefully the rain and thunder holds off.
Yeah.
We're going to run a true 4x1A team. Well, we think what's going to be our true 4x1A team, so we'll see how that goes. And then those that can go, we're going to take to Ursinus on Friday and Saturday. That's another meet that we kind of threw on there. They're hosting the AARTFC Championships this year, so it's good for them, some of those athletes, to see the facility. It's good to know the layout. The weather's looking pretty nice the next two meets. Tomorrow we're looking at highs in the upper 70s, some possible rain in the afternoon, maybe some storms. Hopefully, again, those hold off. If there's one thing I've learned about spring track is that if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes because it's probably going to change.
Correct.
Right. Ursinus, same thing. We're looking at, mid to high 70s, pretty decent tailwind for the sprints. But all in all, it's a crazy weekend. I know I will not be traveling on Saturday. I have some family obligations, so I appreciate all of you for stepping in to do that. But what are you excited for over the next couple meets, Coach Weir?
I think that, the 400 hurdles, like I mentioned last week, is always a very exciting event for me. We're sending off a lot of our 4 hurdlers again. Most of them competed at the JT meet, but we're going to have a good chunk of them at York again.
Yeah, we'll get Rowan in the mix.
Yeah.
Another surprise athlete's going to be making his 400 hurdle debut.
Yeah.
We'll wait and talk about that next week because it could be a huge disaster or a huge success.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
And then, I think seeing Calder and Carter, get some nice weather, fast track, that hopefully, barring any mistakes or anything, should be a very good competition.
Yeah, and what about throws? What are we looking at?
I'm looking forward to see what these kids can put together in some nicer temperatures because the last few weeks, Lebanon Valley and this past weekend at JT, it was a little chilly. We had some wind at both, and when the sun went away, it got really cold. So having weather in the 70s for both, I'm excited to see what being loose and ready to go does for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be nice to see some sprinters sprint in sprinting weather, and throwers throw in weather that's conducive to being explosive. Our distance runners, I don't think are going to like it too much.
No,
it's a good thing to run it under the lights on Wednesday night because it hopefully will drop down in the 50s or so by then. But I'm just hopeful for good weather, warm temps. No storms, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you guys for joining me again. This has been another episode of the JT Exchange podcast. Please follow us on Instagram, follow, share. Thanks, guys.